Welcome to MASH Recaps. Today, we're going to recap a war, action-adventure film called Troy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more interesting movie recaps. Agamemnon is the king of Mycenae, and he wants to rule over all of Greece. He decides to attack the nation of Thessaly to add it to his growing list of conquests. King Triopas of Thessaly proposes a deal. Instead of having a big war, they will each choose one fighter to battle it out and decide who wins. Triopas picks the giant Boreas, while Agamemnon chooses Achilles. However, Achilles is nowhere to be found, so a messenger boy is sent to fetch him. Achilles doesn't like Agamemnon and doesn't want to fight for him. He wants to make his own way in the world and be remembered forever. When Achilles finally arrives, he easily defeats Boreas and asks if there is anyone else brave enough to fight him. Triopas offers Achilles a prize to give to Agamemnon, but Achilles refuses and walks away. Prince Hector and Paris of Troy are visiting King Menelaus of Sparta as guests and peace envoys. During the feast, Paris falls in love with Menelaus' wife, Helen, and convinces her to come with him back to Troy. He sneaks her onto his brother's ship, and when Hector finds out, he is angry, but it's too late to return Helen to Sparta. Menelaus discovers that Helen is missing and vows to seek revenge on Troy. He seeks the support of his brother Agamemnon, who is eager to help because he wants to conquer Troy, a city that seems unbeatable. Odysseus, a king from Ithaca, was ordered by Agamemnon to ask Achilles to join them in attacking Troy, practicing fighting with his cousin Patroclus, who was very eager to join the battle. However, Achilles refused to go despite Odysseus' promise that this war would be remembered in history. Later, Achilles spoke to his mother Thetis, who is a sea nymph, and she told him that if he stayed home, he would have a happy life with a wife, family, and would die old and loved. But if he went to Troy, he would become famous and remembered for thousands of years. However, going to Troy would mean he would never return and would die there. Meanwhile, Hector and Paris return to Troy with Helen, greeted warmly by their fellow Trojans. The city is guarded by a high, thick wall that has remained impenetrable since its founding. They meet their father, King Priam, who welcomes Helen and praises her beauty. Hector is reunited with his wife, Andromache, and his infant son. Achilles decides to join Agamemnon's mission to conquer Troy, but brings his own soldiers, the infamous Myrmidons, led by Eudorus. Patroclus also comes along. The Myrmidons are faster than the other Greek soldiers and reach the shores of Troy before anyone else. Achilles motivates his soldiers by telling them that they will be remembered forever for their bravery. Worried about Patroclus' safety, Achilles asks him to stay and guard the ship. The Myrmidons easily take over the beach and capture Briseis, a priestess who is Hector and Paris' cousin. Despite Eudorus' warning not to disrespect the gods, Achilles chops off the head of Apollo's statue. Prince Hector leads an attack to keep the Greeks away and enters the temple where Achilles confronts him, but refuses to fight him. Achilles says that their battle would be more meaningful if it was witnessed by others, so he lets Hector leave. Briseis is taken to Achilles' hut as his prize. She scolds him for killing the priests of Apollo before he is called to meet Agamemnon, who is preparing to celebrate their victory. Tensions rise as Achilles and the king argue over who should take credit for the win. Agamemnon then brings in Briseis and claims her as his own prize, which angers Achilles. He threatens to fight Agamemnon for her, but she interrupts and declares that she doesn't want anyone else to die for her. Achilles puts down his weapon, surprising Agamemnon. Achilles vows that Agamemnon will one day fall under his sword. That night, Priam seeks the advice of his advisors and elders with his sons in attendance, discussing how best to defend against the Greeks. Paris offers an alternative to bloodshed. He will fight Menelaus for Helen's hand. The winner will take her home and the loser will burn before nightfall. Later, Priam speaks with Paris in a courtyard and admits that, in all the wars he's fought for power or land, a war fought for love makes more sense. He gives Paris the sword of Troy, forged at its founding and containing the history of their nation. He explains that as long as a Trojan wields it, there is hope for their people. Hector goes to see his wife and son. She fears for his life and can't imagine living on without him. He comforts her before getting up to see his brother. In the halls, he sees a cloaked figure and gives pursuit to find that it's Helen trying to leave the city. She is remorseful for being the sole reason so many Trojan men died that day, but Hector tells her that returning to Menelaus will not end the war and that she is a princess of Troy now. Helen returns to Paris. The next day, Agamemnon's army marches for Troy while Achilles, still seething over his loss of Briseis. Hector and Paris ride out to meet Agamemnon and Menelaus before battle. Agamemnon demands that the Trojans return Helen to his brother and submit to his rule. Hector bravely rebuffs, but Paris offers to fight Menelaus one-on-one, hoping that will settle the dispute. While Agamemnon could care less about returning Helen to his brother, he allows Menelaus the opportunity to issue revenge. The two begin their fight and Menelaus is clearly stronger. Paris, fighting under his brother's advice of waiting until Menelaus tires, is wounded and disarmed, but before Menelaus can deliver a death blow, ducks away and crawls back to his brother. Stunned at his cowardice, Menelaus demands the fight to continue, but Hector defends his brother and drives his sword through Menelaus, killing him. Enraged, Agamemnon charges forward with his army. Watching from his hilltop, Achilles curses under his breath at Agamemnon's inability to keep his ranks in formation. Hector proves to be the more able warrior and overpowers the Greeks with his tactics. Odysseus advises Agamemnon to fall back before he loses his entire army, and the Greeks retreat to the beach where their archers provide defense. With Menelaus dead, the primary reason for the assault on Troy is gone, and Agamemnon struggles to think of a way to rally the troops to his cause. Odysseus suggests that Agamemnon put his reservations aside and enlist Achilles to fight again. Outside, Briseis is tossed around between Greek soldiers, having been given to them by Agamemnon. Before she can be cruelly branded, Achilles steps in and takes her back to his hut. He gives her a wet cloth to clean with and some food. When she questions why he fights and defies the gods, he shows her a more reflective side to his nature and explains that the gods are jealous of men for their short, mortal lives. As such, everything is more beautiful. Priam consults with his advisors again, while Hector advises his father that the Greeks underestimated Trojan strength and that they should not do the same. However, General Glaucus wants to strike preemptively. High Priest Archeptomus claims Troy is favored by the gods, citing bird omens. Despite Hector's warnings to keep behind their walls, Priam favors his advisors and issues an attack before daybreak. As Achilles sleeps that night, Briseis takes a dagger and holds it to his throat. He encourages her to kill him, but she hesitates. They realize their feelings for each other and make love. Achilles decides that he's had enough of war and offers to take Briseis away from Troy. Afterwards, he speaks with Eudorus and tells him that they will go home. Just as dawn approaches, the Trojan army, led by Hector, set up on the dunes and sent hundreds of lit arrows into the sand. The Greeks awake in time to see large balls of hay being rolled down the hill towards camp, ignited in huge fireballs by the torched arrows. Banging their shields to intimidate their enemies, the Trojans advance towards the Greek camp. Suddenly, Achilles appears in his armor and rallies the troops to fight. Achilles fights his way towards Hector, and the two engage in combat. Greeks and Trojans alike surround them, edging them on, until Hector slits Achilles' throat with a swift slash of his sword. Achilles falls, gasping for breath, while the Myrmidons look on in horror. But when Hector removes his helmet, he discovers that the man he wounded is not Achilles, but Patroclus. Hector, repentant but resolute, drives his sword into the boy's chest to finish him. He addresses Odysseus and tells him they've fought enough that day. Before leaving, Odysseus tells Hector that Patroclus was Achilles' cousin. The Myrmidons return to camp as Achilles emerges from his tent. Seeing them battle-worn, he asks why they disobeyed him. Eudorus laments that Patroclus disguised himself in Achilles' armor, even moved like him, and fell under Hector. Achilles is outraged and attacks Eudorus. Briseis tries to stop him, but he throws her to the ground. Hector returns to his wife. He admits that he killed a boy who was much too young and feels that his actions will have severe repercussions. He shows his wife a hidden passage under Troy that she can take civilians through to get to the mountains if walls be breached. Though she is upset to have to consider the plan, she heeds his advice. Achilles puts his cousin on a funeral pyre and sets it alight. Agamemnon watches and says, "That boy may have just saved the war for us," knowing that the rage of Achilles will not wane until he's had revenge. Meanwhile, Helen watches as Paris practices practices his archery in preparation for battle, hitting his target with increasing accuracy. The following morning, Achilles sets off to enact vengeance upon Hector. Briseis begs him not to go, but he ignores her. He takes his chariot to the gates of Troy and calls for Hector, who dresses in his armor and says goodbye to his wife. He meets Achilles outside alone. Achilles throws down his helmet so that Hector can see his face. Though Hector tries to reason, Achilles is bent on bloodlust. As they begin to fight, Priam and Paris watch while Helen comforts Andromache, who can't bring herself to look. The two fight furiously, breaking each other's spears. Hector trips on an embedded stone and is ordered by his opponent to stand and resume the fight. Achilles overpowers Hector when he throws the tip of a spear into his chest and finishes him off with his sword. He then ties Hector's legs together behind his chariot and drags him away, back to the beach while the Trojans look on in horror. When he returns to his hut, Briseis cries out and asks when the killing will stop before leaving. That night, Achilles is visited by a stranger in a cloak. The stranger kisses Achilles' hand, revealing himself as King Priam. Having stealthily entered the Greek camp unnoticed, Priam begs for the return of his son's body to be given a proper burial. He tells Achilles that, while Hector killed his cousin, he did not know who it was, and he asks Achilles how many cousins and brothers he's killed in his time. Despite being enemies, he asks for respect. When Briseis comes forward, Achilles allows her to go home and apologizes for hurting her. He gives Priam his word that the Greeks will not attack Troy for 12 days to allow for proper mourning. When Agamemnon hears of Achilles' secret treaty with Priam, he becomes incensed. Odysseus, who notices the sculpture of a horse a fellow soldier has made for his son, proposes a plan, using the 12 days of mourning to their advantage. After 12 days, the Trojans discover that the beach has been abandoned and various bodies lie in the sand. They appear to have been taken by disease, and where the heart of the camp once was, a large wooden horse has been erected. Priam is advised that the horse was left as a gift to the god Poseidon and is encouraged to bring it back to Troy. Priam brings the horse into the city where it's revered as a sign of the end of the war. A Trojan scout, hiking through the cliffs outside the city, comes upon a cove apart from the main beach and discovers the Greek armada hiding there. However, he is killed by arrow before he can warn the rest of Troy. Meanwhile, the whole city celebrates into the night. Once everything has quieted down, the horse opens and Achilles, Odysseus, and a small detachment of Greek soldiers emerge and slay several guards and open Troy's gate. The Greek army quickly pours into the city, pillaging and burning homes and killing any Trojan who stands in their way, while a tearful Priam can only watch. Soldiers of Troy attempt to defend the royal palace, but fail. As Priam prays before the statue of Apollo and asks why he's been forsaken, Agamemnon approaches behind him and stabs him in the back. Achilles, meanwhile, searches the city for Briseis. Paris and Andromache lead surviving civilians down to the secret passage, where Paris gives a young boy, Aeneas, the sword of Troy, reciting what his father told him. Briseis is praying before a statue of Apollo when she is grabbed from behind by Agamemnon. Achilles finds them and rushes to her rescue. Agamemnon tells Briseis his intent to take her back to Greece as his slave before she takes a concealed knife and fatally stabs him in the neck. His guards accost her, but Achilles kills them. As he is helping her up, Paris arrives and shoots an arrow through Achilles' left heel. Standing up to face Paris, despite Briseis' cries, Achilles is shot again through the chest. He finally collapses and tells Briseis that she was his piece in a lifetime of war and urges her to escape. Briseis goes with Paris and they leave as the Greeks arrive at the palace to find Achilles dead. Achilles' body is burned honorably on a funeral pyre within the ruins of Troy the following day, as Odysseus watches and exalts. If they ever tell my story, let them say I walked with giants. Men rise and fall like the winter wheat, but these names will never die. Let them say I lived in the time of Hector, tamer of horses. Let them say I lived in the time of Achilles. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe for more interesting recaps.